Coming out this podcast, just a man doing the best he can with what he got. And at the 2026 BAFTA Film Awards, Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo were on stage presenting an award when a racial slur was shouted at them from the audience. The person has been identified as John Davidson, a Tourette syndrome advocate who also has a movie connected to his public profile, which made this timing kind of strange. Reports later said the outburst was an involuntary tic connected to his condition. For those of y'all who don't know, the outburst was the N-word. Now, here's the thing, man. I did some research on this because Tourette syndrome is one of them things that we really don't know a lot about. Only thing we know is cuss words. But the form of Tourette's that John Davidson has is called coprolalia. Now, Tourette syndrome is a neurological condition that causes involuntary tics, movements or sounds a person may not be able to control, but a small percentage of the people with Tourette's experience coprolalia, like where social, inappropriate, or offensive words come out involuntarily, right? The brain tends to latch on to words that are emotionally charged and taboo, and people often describe a buildup as like pressure inside of them before the tics happen, and it makes them feel uncomfortable, kind of like a sneeze, and then the stress, attention, and high pressure moments can make these involuntary tics worse. So, Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo on stage trying to present an award, and John Davidson has an involuntary tic, and the N-word comes out. Now, the show was on a tape delay. That means there was a time to edit that moment out beforehand, but the slur was still broadcasted. Still broadcasted. You're on time delay for these various situations. So somebody made a decision or failed to make one, and that moment went out to the world. You couldn't edit it out live. You did not. Now, John Davis released a public statement saying, "I'm deeply mortified that my involuntary vocal tics may have caused hurt or offense. I want to make it clear that the words were not intentional and do not reflect my beliefs. I have lived with Tourette syndrome for many years, and while I work hard to manage my condition, sometimes tics happen beyond my control." That's the statement he made. All fine and dandy, but I gotta point out where we keep on falling for the okie doke. First, let me say, like living with Tourette's, from all the research I've done, living with Tourette's has to be horrible. And my heart goes out to anybody who has involuntary tics and movements. And for the subset of people with Tourette's that have this same condition as Mr. Davidson, which is around 10 to 15% of people with Tourette's, man, it has to be hard. But I gotta ask y'all a question. Is there definitive scientific proof that if you have Tourette syndrome, you can't be a racist? Is there? Bro, we don't know you. We don't know your history. We don't know things you've done. How are we supposed to separate that word involuntarily with you, the person? The bigger discussion is how people just want black people not to say anything. How dare you be offended by the words and the actions that happened involuntarily, even though those actions were offensive? It's literally a trick bag. People always want you not to be offended when you see racist stuff. And there's always a reason or explanation to why you should not be offended by the racist stuff you see. And that's the whole conversation. That's what this is really about. So most people think this is about a person with a disability saying a racial slur. No, it's not. It's not about that. Two things can be true, and this is more so about accountability or the lack thereof. That's what has a large majority of black people mad. It's an unearned benefit of the doubt. Now let's look at this man's apology. It's a general apology. It's not a direct apology. And in this apology, he was centering himself. It's, hey, if you're offended by what I did involuntarily, I'm sorry. I've struggled with this for many years. I try to manage this, but it's beyond my control. Not an apology for what happened and how that may have made other people around him feel. It's just, hey, sorry, I can't control myself. Now, here's the thing. I know he can't control himself, but afterwards, you can control how you take accountability for what happened. Not once did this guy give the people affected by that a direct apology. So Michael B. Jordan and Delroy have to sit up there, absorb a man who involuntarily used the N-word while they was up there with dignity and grace. They got to sit there and absorb that. And the most infuriating part of this was, after that happened, the host came up and said, hey man, one of our guests has Tourette's syndrome. The focus was on Tourette's and not on the people and how they felt. BAFTA did not issue a direct apology to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy till after the ceremony. Not right after it happened, after the ceremony, and they started to get backlash, then they apologized. But the main focus was on Tourette's. And let me be clear, man, this man should not be shamed for his disability. Him having that disability should not be shamed. But one man's disability outshadowed how two black men could have felt in that moment. It was more like, hey, whatever, guys. Nobody asked no questions like, hey, man, do we know this guy's history? Do we know? Oh, don't worry. He said he's not a racist. Oh, cool. That's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. No discussion about, hey, man, how those black people could have felt in that moment hearing that racial slur. It's more like, hey, it's bad, but what can you do? I don't know. Let's talk about Tourette's, right? And a lot of people are throwing out that maybe this was a promotional scheme to promote his movie, I Swear. Right? Now, I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not saying it is, because from doing my research about Tourette's, and it's not like saying I'm an expert, but doing my research on Tourette's, by all accounts, man, they cannot control what they say. Like, they have no filter. The filter on their brain is not there. So the brain tends to want to say the most socially awkward and emotionally charged words. Not his fault. But what is his fault is how he handled the situation afterward. Because even though your actions may be involuntary, they are your actions and you are responsible for your actions. So a classy move would have been to directly apologize to the black men. Now you're saying in your general apology that that does not reflect your values. If it did not reflect your values, then you should know the implications of your words and directly apologize to the public and to those black men for that word and explain why it's a vile word and why they should or could be hurt by that. That's accountability. Nobody is taking accountability for any of these actions. And that's the problem, and that's what got everybody mad right now. This ain't about his disability. Most rational people can understand, man, this man has a disability that causes him to say things involuntarily. We can understand that. What we can't understand is how it's handled afterwards. And somebody's hearing this right now, they're gonna be like, oh my God, black folks too sensitive. You always want us to kiss your ass. Let's just make this personal. Because a lot of you guys do good with sympathy, but you don't do good with empathy. So let me just make this personal. And let me just play out a scenario. So we had a mutual friend's house for a dinner party. Now, before I come to our mutual friend's house, you don't know me, but I'm coming there and I tell our mutual friend that, hey man, I have Tourette syndrome, and sometimes I may blurt and cuss out inappropriate things. And our mutual friend who's throwing this dinner party said, hey man, it's cool. I totally understand. Now, you and your wife come to this dinner party, and involuntarily, I'm really trying not to say this, but I look at your wife and say, you ugly fat bitch, repeatedly. And then the dinner guest comes up and say, oh wait, hey, Marcus has Tourette syndrome. Would you still want an apology for me calling your wife a fat bitch? I mean, you can totally understand why I said it, but wouldn't you still want an apology because of that? Or are you expected to be like, oh, that's totally okay, man. You know, I get it. Don't be offended by it. Just chill. And once again, shout out to Michael and Delroy for handling this with grace and dignity. But that doesn't also mean that other guests around there felt comfortable with what happened. So you got to address the elephant in the room. Not just one part of it, the whole elephant. Why are we on eggshells? Why can't we all just come out and say, man, those words were hurtful to say to black people, and this is why it was hurtful to say to black people. Now, if you're John Davidson, I'm assuming you had Tourette's all your life. And I'm assuming that you've had to deal with explaining these social situations all your life. And I know that has to be a burden on you, man. It has to be a burden for you to have this disability and have to explain it all the damn time. But why did you not explain why the N-word is bad to say, right? Well, here's the thing, man. John Davidson doesn't have to give an apology. He really doesn't. You don't have to apologize. Nor does he have to give an explanation of how his disability works. He really doesn't. Doesn't have to. But it says a whole lot more about the situation and the standing and how people think about black people more than anything I can ever point out. And once again, this is a case of two things being true. Could totally be an involuntary tick that the man didn't have control of. Also, super duper racist. Both things can exist at the same time. And a general apology talks to the public. Accountability talks to people who took the impact. And when those people are standing on stage in front of their peers, handling the moment with dignity, not naming them matters. So there's two layers of accountability here. Like one, the individual who caused the moment, and two, the organization that allowed it to air on a delayed broadcast unedited. The situation is bigger than one award show. We see it all the time, man. Statements that explain what happened, but don't center who it happened to. So here's the question. When something goes wrong, are we focused on protecting reputations or actually acknowledging the people who were disrespected? That's the conversation. What does accountability look like? And hey, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's another perspective I'm not taking into consideration, and I'm open to hear that. And once again, let me just be clear. I am not demonizing Mr. Davidson for his disability. What I'm addressing is what happened afterward.